Brett Kavanaugh is our newest Supreme Court Justice, and there was much rejoicing. But why exactly? The Monica Perez Show starts now. This is Monica Perez, your libertarian voice on News 95.5 and AM 750 WSB. Usually on Saturdays from 3 to 6, but during football season I move around. It's live right now if you're listening. Phones are open. 800 WSB Talk. It is Sunday. We're on from 1 to 3. I am joined by my trusty producer, Brad Binkley. Hey, Binkley, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Great. You had a show last night?
I did. I told everybody to listen.
What was your show?
It was an improv show for a couple of friends of mine, Trey and Alex, who are getting married today. So congratulations to them. All right. Well, it sounds like it was a good time. I wish we were on yesterday so we could have told people where to go. But next time we'll... Relapse Theaters where we were. We'll give you a little shout out. I'm sure people would like to see the many different talents of Binkley. So, all right. So you, I know, have been... you and I have kind of following the opposite sides of this Brett Kavanaugh thing. I should never admit this, but I just could not bring myself to watch these hearings. Like I am one of those people, and I think every single person is one of those people where when there's the People magazine on the coffee table in the doctor's office, you're going to look at it and you're going to keep reading it. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's that dopamine thing that Facebook cultivates, but people were just wild for that. And I know it's important who the next Supreme Court justice is. I get that. But I really have no tolerance now at all, which it's a bad time to have no tolerance. They kind of saturated me with this stuff, that every single topic is personal. It's not, they don't talk about policies and issues. They really, I do this sometimes. Turn on Fox News when I'm in the car on the radio just to hear if there is any discussion of anything under the surface. And it reminds me of that quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, not my favorite person, but this is my favorite quote of hers anyway. It's roughly that great mind, small minds think of people, average minds think of events, and great minds think of ideas. And our descent into purely personal, to me, makes a real functioning democracy defending like real principles impossible. And so that's why I couldn't, but doesn't mean that we're not going to, so this may be an advantage that I'll bring something totally unique because I want to talk about issues. So, but maybe you can tease to some of the stuff that you're going to bring that was from the actual hearing. Well, it was 8 hours of a circus that would make Jerry Springer blush, but there's a lot of stuff in there that's revealing that you don't hear on the mainstream media. And I put together some clips just to kind of show how outrageous it is and to show reveal some of the intentions, I think. Yeah, I picked a couple of the clips that you sent me. It's hard for me to listen to. I think the reason I couldn't listen to it is because I felt like I was listening to a kitten. Like it was just like this little kitten. And then when you realize that she's an accomplished woman, she's probably older than I am, that it was just incongruous to me. And like my mother always told me when I couldn't watch the State of the Union addresses, I literally, since I was little, I would have to walk out of the room. She said, you just can't stand hearing people lie. So I did not assess this personally. So I'm not saying that, but some of the things that you brought up to me made me agree with you that this was an act. But this you've never heard, I actually concluded that Kavanaugh was getting a little bit of his own medicine in that. Now, did you hear anybody talk about what I told you that I uncovered about this guy? No. And as a matter of fact, you thought the opposite of what I thought because you had read a New York Times whitewash piece. Let me tell you a little bit of what I came up with. I got duped by fake news. You were duped. The New York Times was playing the role of Snopes to debunk totally valid stories. So this is it. Brett Kavanaugh was an investigator under Ken Starr against Clinton in the Whitewater investigation, which then expanded to include Vince Foster and ultimately Monica Lewinsky.
Now, I think everybody knows that, but what people do not realize, and what the New York Times article said, was that Kavanaugh, so when people call Kavanaugh a conspiracy theorist, they're referring to this meme put out by the New York Times and others that he pursued these crazy conspiracy theories that Vince Foster was murdered and did not commit suicide. However, it's not like that at all. From what I can tell, two things happened that forced Kavanaugh and Starr to investigate Vince Foster for the purpose, the intention, I believe, especially since the proof is in the pudding, to put rumors of Vince Foster's murder to rest from the right. So these guys were supposed to be opponents of Bill Clinton. So if they came up with the idea that if they concluded Vince Foster was a suicide, then it would be put to rest. And that is what happened. And the two things that forced him to reopen Vince Foster, as opposed to New York Times saying he was a nut job who used taxpayers' money to track down a conspiracy theories, were two things. His predecessor, or somebody in the investigative role in the Office of the Special Counsel, who was pushed out, he said, Miguel Rodriguez, I think the name was, wrote, which I just printed out, I saw it for the first time like 5 minutes before the show started, the letter, this brief or whatever it's called by Rodriguez, and the first line is, present for this meeting were Mark Toohey, Brett Kavanaugh, Jeff Green, and me. The meeting was convened to discuss my review of the Foster death materials. Miguel Rodriguez wrote this in December of 1994. And he proceeds to say, why he does not agree with the other reports that said Vince Foster was a suicide. He actually Miguel Rodriguez goes through the facts that are wrong in those reports. And he left his job as a result of that. Then there was another guy, Patrick Knowlton, who was a witness, who saw some things at the scene before the body was discovered that he said was inconsistent with the FBI report, and the FBI had misrepresented what this guy said. And when a reporter brought it to the attention of the special counsel, they simply had to talk to this guy. So he later sued for the way he was treated. This witness, he was a witness, and he was treated as a criminal by, according to him and others, Brett Kavanaugh. So Brett Kavanaugh, when he said, I saw a different person in a different car from what you said I saw or from what other people saw, I just want to correct the record that your story of the scene that I witnessed is not consistent with my memories. And according to him and his statement and his suit, Brett Kavanaugh said, what were you doing there? And he said, well, I was going to the bathroom. He said, was anybody else in the bathroom with you? It's like, well, and then it gets really nasty. Like the line of questioning is trying to implicate this guy as being engaged in salacious or illicit activities. And what this means to me is that, like when I was investigating Merrick Garland and Comey and Mueller, these people all pop up in these weird stories. And it makes me feel like these guys are the real deep state, and they're getting their rewards. And like Knowlton sued the government over his treatment in the Vince Foster thing at the hands of Kavanaugh and Starr, Comey and Mueller, also, the government actually paid people out for how they were treated. These are supposed to be lawmen, and the government's having to pay out for the way they violated these guys' rights. And the last thing I will say is, this is nothing compared to what happened to Patrick Knowlton. This is nothing compared to what happened to Bill Cosby, and you're not hearing about that, and it's much more relevant to you, and I want to talk about that in the show also. So what do you think?
The thing about Bill Cosby is very interesting because he's such an unsympathetic character that people don't care. There are some violations there.
It's like Alex Jones.
Yeah.
They came for Alex Jones, but nobody cared because he was a jerk.
He's Alex Jones. Like, we don't care.
And nobody, people came for Cosby, and nobody cared because the accusations were because he's a jerk too.
Yeah, and they apply those same standards to other people. Like I told people our website got removed a few weeks ago, and so they can pin it on Alex Jones, nobody will care. Then they can start doing the same thing to other people.
Well, I'll tell you, this is what I noticed. So at the beginning, I was saying to people like moms of the friends of my kids, you shouldn't take this lightly, the Alex Jones thing, because my website got taken down. And then they're like, oh, what's wrong with you?
Right, exactly. And that's the
like,
reaction.
wait,
yeah.
Nothing. I can't, but I would show you my website. But they took it down.
Yeah.
So, and they took down, so I did recover the material on there for the most part, all the text and everything, but the pictures are gone. Most of the pictures and video and media are lost, and that's where the evidence was for all the things I ever claimed. So This was 6-7 years of work on my part with documented evidence. And so I can't even, people can say, oh, you just made this unsubstantiated claim. And I would like to say, no, I didn't, but it's all gone.
They stole the evidence.
Huh?
They stole the evidence is basically what they did.
Yeah, and if it's scrubbed from my site, it's scrubbed, universally. That was the point of it, actually.
Yeah, it's just important, I think, that you can not like someone and also not like what is being done to them.
Well, of course, they can't do it to people who are liked.
Yeah.
They can't. They have to start with the people who are not liked. They simply must. And I personally have been told in both of those cases, Alex Jones and Bill Cosby, that, oh, who cares? Because, you know what I mean? People who are from the left, from the right, people who consider themselves liberty-oriented, who think they care about rights, will absolutely, representatives from every possible walk of American society have chalked up that stuff to, well, who cares? Because they're bad. But
it'll eventually happen to someone they do like.
But then they might stop liking them.
Yeah.
That's not, once this thing takes hold and they're able to blacklist people, then you have to stop liking them. It just becomes this thing where once you accepted that they were fair in their knee-jerk assessment right off the bat, anyway, don't get me started. But actually do get me started because we have so much to do and cover in these 2 hours. I'm happy to take calls and tweets, 404-872-0750, 1-800-WSB-TALK, or you can tweet at me at Monica Perez Show.
Monica Perez.
29 years of service in the Army as a professional intelligence officer. I sincerely appreciate your program.
On News 95.5 and AM 750, WSB.
We're back. We're here till 3. It's Sunday. Binkley, do we have a way for people to, what's the best way for people to get our podcasts in case they lose track of when we're on during football season?
Well, is our website up and running again yet?
Yes, it is, but sometimes it's a little tricky to search on. There's some stuff got screwed up on it. So
iTunes, Propaganda Report Podcast, I will tweet it out.
That's great. And his Twitter handle is at Freedom Act Radio. And mine is Monica Perez Show, at Monica Perez Show. So I'll retweet that. So here's the thing. We're talking about Kavanaugh, and people are super excited. People on the right are super excited at this triumph. I mean, really celebrating. And I smell a rat, of course, because I don't think this guy is particularly worth celebrating. I feel like we were set up, we all in society, left and right, to be emotionally involved in this battle that wasn't really based on content, but on just pure partisanship, like a sports event. And for me, lately, people talk about conservative justices, and I think historically we thought of those people as constitutionalists. Conservative means to look back, to not change, to be cautious. So for us, that means to always have the touchstone of our founding documents and our founding principles. In Europe, it's different. In England, to be conservative is to like the monarchy, is to go back and use that foundation as a touchstone. But for us, the conservative is you don't want the change. What we're actually getting is neoconservatives, which if you read, just if you can find it on my blog, probably the best thing I ever wrote was an analysis of Irving Kristol's book, Neoconservatism, the Autobiography of an Idea, where he tells Republicans to give up on the idea of small government, to stop kowtowing to the population and be more aggressive in foreign policy, that the people want to be led, especially in issues of economics and foreign policy. So when I look at somebody who's considered a conservative, like Brett Kavanaugh, I want to know, is he a constitutionalist or is he a neocon? So if you and this is what I wish the Senate and the mainstream media had brought up. What is this guy made of? And there are some cases that I think bear serious scrutiny. One was, and I'll just, the best summaries I've found of these, you really have to totally dig in, but the Wikipedia one-liners on some of his decisions. One was Kavanaugh wrote that the metadata collection, the big warrantless wiretaps, whatever, and everything that implied, I guess, stimulated these cases. He wrote the metadata collection at issue was not a search, and even if it were, no reasonable suspicion would be required because of the government's special need to prevent terrorist attacks. So that's the Fourth Amendment being completely negated.
Right.
And I can't cope with that.
And that wasn't talked about at all because all everybody talked about was the sex stuff and the alcohol. Right.
And so people will say, well, who do you want? And I wanted Judge Napolitano, the libertarian. He's a constitutionalist, whether it makes him comfortable or uncomfortable.
If they wanted to stop Kavanaugh, that was the route to take. But the problem is that would not have mobilized these masses of people that would have strengthened these activist organizations. Their number one goal was to strengthen these activist organizations using these sensitive issues.
Right, and you know what? It worked in the right's favor, too. The people on the right got him forwarded, even though, to me, he's the true deep state, given his Foster background, or he's a neocon, given his position on negating the Constitution in the name of terrorism. But that's, so let's peel the onion a little bit more after the break. 800 WSB Talk. You can tweet at me at Monica Perez Show.
Monica Perez.
That was phenomenal.
On News 95.5 and AM 750 WSB.
I am your libertarian voice on WSB. My normal time slot is Saturday 3 to 6, but during football season, I happily make away. So I am on today, Sunday, from 1 to 3, and I am your libertarian voice. And the basic principle of libertarianism is that you defend individual rights. It's individual liberty is at the heart of it, and that's what's at stake right now. So I want to get into, I have some calls. If you're on the hold right now, I'm going to go through all those calls right in 1 minute. But I'll tell you that what's happening with Brett Kavanaugh, he is looking for a government job. He's been in the government basically his whole life. He wants an extremely powerful lifetime appointment. And he subjected himself to this. Now, once it got truly ugly, I believe he had to clear his name. But Bill Cosby, I have actual court documents that I believe demonstrate that he was persecuted because of his political speech, that his First Amendment right was violated. Then it's very clear his Fifth, Sixth, and Eighth Amendment rights were violated. And I want to, at the top of the hour, I want to go through that because you only really have to talk about this stuff when it's a jerk you're defending. Because if it was Shirley Temple up there, everybody would be bending over backwards to help her. You could never, ever falsely accuse her with such a shabby approach. So it's the jerks you got to defend. I'm going to do that at the top of the hour. And Bill Cosby was a jerk. I will tell you what he actually did and admitted to. Pretty reprehensible, if you ask me. Very cynical, disgusting, but not criminal. And in any case, even if it was, there was no evidence of a crime. So if that's enough to get you interested in the whole story, I'm going to move on. I have a lot of calls and I want to get through every one of them. So I'll give you a just give me what you got in a minute, and I'm going to take the calls in the order in which they were received. Beth in Dawsonville, you're on with Monica.
Well, thank you. Hi, I believe that this girl is a liar. I do believe that I think there's so many things in her story Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Beth. Thank you.
My voice is a little bad today.
No, you're great. You sound great.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You sound great. Keep going.
Thank you. She grew up in the East Coast, I believe, in Maryland. And now suddenly she's got that teenage California sing-song speech pattern. I believe that's very made up and very planned.
I believe that her background, her thesis or whatever, was in elements of child psychology. So she should be able to put that persona. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. But Binkley here, thank you very much, Beth, for the call. Binkley.
Well, I'm not done yet.
Okay, give me one. Go on. Keep going.
Okay, that's one thing. First off, when I heard her, that's what I thought. And second of all, most important thing to me, anything that could be proved about her telling the truth or lying in her story are the hard factual things. She conveniently doesn't remember the place, the time, the house, all these things. They can be proved. Conveniently, those are the things she can't remember. Now, I'm a victim of child abuse, but that's not where I'm coming from. But I remember, I'm almost 70 years old. I remember a horrible incident in my childhood. I'd swear on a stack of Bibles that I fell and hurt myself one way. Later on in my life, I would swear on Bibles. My mother told me, darling, you were hit over the head by your little playmate with a rock. So all my life, I've had this in my head. And that's why I think that her mind is screwed up someplace. And usually the ones that are the psychologists are the dumbest ones.
Oh my
I know
gosh.
it from my life. That's my personal opinion, darling.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
Beth. Well, let me respond. Keep listening. So this is what I would say. You bring up a very important point in that I didn't listen to this at all because I didn't care whether she was telling the truth or lying for this reason. Not because it's not important if a guy is willing to force himself on somebody else or is a chronic drunk or anything like that. But something that happens that far in the past is impossible to defend against. And so that's why there's a statute of limitations. And that's why I thought, well, there's just this guy could not possibly have. It's a very basic principle of law. However, Binkley brought something to my attention that really blew me away. Real quick, Binkley, there was no statute of limitations.
No, there's no statute of limitations in the state of Maryland for sex felony crimes, and there's applicable law from 1982 that she could file a criminal complaint today. She could have for the past 36 years. She still can tomorrow, and it would trigger a criminal investigation, one that is guided by law and standards of evidence. But that's not what they want because it takes it out of the PR realm, of the propaganda realm that they can control.
And there is a lower standard of evidence, obviously, because this isn't a criminal case. So she could never probably get a criminal case brought with absolutely no evidence and witnesses. And then on the other hand, you can't. What I don't like is what people are saying. The senator, and I even saw a libertarian, I believe the Libertarian Party tweeted this out, that the allegations that he stands credibly accused.
They throw that word in there in every single article.
What the heck?
Incredibly acute, yeah.
I mean, anything is credible.
Right.
We went to the moon, right? So everything is credible. Like, that's pretty hard to believe. But if it happened, things are credible.
That drives me crazy. People just add credible to their statement as though by saying that in itself thus makes it true.
Yeah, it's not. It's a very dangerous meme they're putting out there, and it definitely means to have legs, as they say. So I'm going to keep going through calls. Let me go to David in Stone Mountain. Hi, David. You're on with Monica. Hey, David. I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I'm ecstatic about the fact that we all won. And the reason I say we all won is that you're innocent until proven guilty. I mean, if they had won this, it would have been the opposite. And then anybody could be charged with something with no evidence, and their whole life turned upside down.
I agree. And here's the problem with if they had allowed this to happen, if she had won or he had lost, is that it creates what's called a moral hazard. So that once just allegations, unsubstantiated allegations are effective, there will be no end to the amount of false allegations that are brought for political purposes. So,
or any other purpose.
Yes. Well, this is what I would like to say is that in a court of law, you would hope that we have more protections, which is why. So this guy he lays down with dogs. He's a government employee.
Yeah,
so,
you get fleas.
Yeah. I mean, so I can't, I'm not as sympathetic to him pursuing a job and taking a beating, which was already totally precedented with Clarence Thomas, whereas Bill Cosby, his real, genuine, defendable constitutional rights were violated. That was the way you're ecstatic about this as a triumph for justice. I'm terrified at the precedent set by the Cosby case as a travesty of justice.
Yeah.
So, but thank you so much for the call. I got to move on. I'm going to Jerry in Johns Creek. Hi, Jerry. You're on with Monica.
Hey, Monica. Love your show. Keep doing up the great work. You got one of the best shows in Atlanta.
Thank you. Keep going.
So I'd like to make the point. Our country was founded on Christian principles. One of those principles being one of the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not bear false witness. That obviously is a commandment for a reason. I listened to your last segment before the break, and I have to agree with you 100%. This is a sham coming from both sides. This should have never been allowed to happen. Mitch McConnell should have stepped up and said, this is supposed to be done privately.
Yes.
He didn't do that. He allowed it to continue, and we ended up with a mockery of our entire system.
Yes, and what is the point of having a representative government instead of a direct democracy if they can do, I think it's pedagogy, I don't know, or demagoguery, where they go appeal directly to the emotions of the lowest common denominator in the population, which is what the purpose of representative democracy not only is that when you had to travel by horse and carriage, everybody couldn't go to vote, but that that you have somebody who's dedicated to understanding the nuances of the principles of law as they should be applied on the marginal issues. That's really the whole point of it, and I think. And it was a dereliction of duty for them to throw it out to us. It was an emotionalism, cynical and political. I agree with you.
Well, not to mention that I've never had a situation, I've never seen a situation before where you can't question the accuser. I mean, it's like, hands off. She's the accuser. You're going to offend people. And the same thing on Kavanaugh's side. He has a right to defend himself. This ended up being a trial in front of the American people. It should have never occurred.
Yeah, I agree. And the damage that was done to him cannot be undone. And that's why it should have been private, without real substantiation.
He's always going to be the justice that committed supposed sexual assault. And let's talk about sexual assault for a minute.
Oh, I can't. I got to take a break. But, Ed, in 1 second, right. Give me a 10-second bite. Go.
Sure.
20
years ago, if you tried to kiss a woman, you were trying to get to second base. Today, it's sexual assault.
Yeah, that's a topic for a larger discussion. I've got to take a break, but I'm dying to hear what Peter has to say. So hang on, Peter. I'll be right back. 800 WSB Talk. You can tweet at me at Monica Perez Show.
Monica Perez on News 95.5 and AM 750 WSB.
We are wrapping up the first hour, but we are on till 3 today, and I am going to get right back to the calls. Peter in Atlanta, you're on with Monica. Hey, Peter, dang it. Peter, start over.
I love your show. I'll try to make this as quickly as I can. First off, I would just like to say that this is a huge victory for America and a huge victory for justice, what happened yesterday. I think that the more you look into the case, the more you find that this was not about sexual assault whatsoever. It was entirely a political sham by the Democrats to keep this seat open. And I think the only evidence that you need for that is to look at Keith Ellison. Keith Ellison, there's a mountain of evidence against Keith Ellison, and you don't hear a peep from the Democrats against him. So this had nothing to do with sexual assault at all. Really what I wanted to get to, though, was what you mentioned earlier about Kavanaugh kind of having some shady history and, being for and voting for things that were kind of encroaching upon America's privacy and rights and things like that.
Yeah.
And I have done research into his background, and I have found a few cases like that. And I just wanted to say that, earlier in the Bush years and after that, you have to realize that the deep state was alive and well back then, and we didn't know nearly as much about it back then as we do now. And I just think that,
but this case
wasn't being...
was 2015. The case I cited was in 2015. I think he's just a neoconservative, and you're going to get that either way. That's the thing. I mean, that's what we get now from the Republicans. So I don't care. You're not getting Judge Napolitano. You're not getting Bork. You're getting neoconservatives. So this is just what you're going to get. And he's not that radical either. So he didn't seem to me, he shouldn't have been this polarizing for the left, and he shouldn't have been a hero to the right. And this muddied the waters to the point where everybody got their emotions up, even though the content was just middling like it always is these days.
I completely agree with you on that. And I will say, though, I think that what it did more than anything else was it opened the eyes of Americans, and it made them realize that these Democrats will not hesitate for 1 second to completely destroy and ruin anyone's life with baseless accusations that have no corroboration or evidence whatsoever. And I think that is going to really rally the Republicans, and I think it's going to be a huge red wave in November rather than a blue wave. So I think everyone needs to get out and vote. It's extremely important. And I think the Democrats are definitely going to lose some seats this November.
That's a very interesting take. I agree. I think, or I should say, I can't decide whether this is more galvanizing for the left or the right. I'm not sure if the spike in voter turnout is going to be, as a result of this, is going to be greater on the left or the right. Binkley, I feel like you're had some... I want to move on a little bit to the Cosby thing because it touches a lot on this, but and I want to ask you something. But did you have something to add on this? Did he?
I think the main motivators behind this whole thing was less the Democrats and more the community organizers behind the massive protests that are going on in America. And when you look at it from their perspective, not the perspective of the people going to the protest, but the people who are organizing it, from their perspective, it only benefits them for Brett Kavanaugh to get nominated. And I said this before. I said that they wanted him to get nominated because that will continue to make it easy for them to mobilize people to send out and continue to do these acts of civil disobedience. It concentrates power for these community organizers.
Well, that actually goes to what if I wanted to be really down the rabbit hole, that what Trump does himself. If you were to take the really long game, Soros was on the ropes, Hillary's ridiculous, she was not getting the Democrats to get together, that putting somebody up that could be really scary to the left could allow Democrats in the middle, to accept a lurch to the left from their party. Yeah. So there's a lot of that.
You want me to read that passage, that quick passage I told you? Do you have time for that?
20 seconds?
Yeah. Saul Alinsky, in his Process of Power, talks about you pursue power first, and if losing an action can get you more members than by winning it, then victory lies in losing, and he will lose.
Oh, that's what you said. Stacey Abrams said. My job is to lose well. I'm not sure if she was talking about this, but this election, maybe the last one. All right, we've got a ton more to cover. I'm going to tell you how Bill Cosby's situation is worse than Brett Kavanaugh's. This is Monica Perez.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
This is Monica Perez, your libertarian voice on News 95.5 and AM 750 WSB. Usually Saturdays from 3 to 6, but it is football season, so I am happy to say I did find a spot on the weekend. Thank you, WSB. Sunday 1, 2, 3 is my spot this week, but if you lose track of us, my producer Binkley and I do our own podcast, plus put this show up commercial-free on our iTunes account. If you want to find those podcasts, just go to @FreedomActRadio on Twitter or @MonicaPerez Show, and we will tweet that stuff out and how to find us. So we're talking about Kavanaugh, and I, in my travels here, trying to get to the bottom of all of this, what the real issues are. First of all, I found that Kavanaugh isn't my kind of guy. I'd rather have Judge Andrew Napolitano. But the travesty of justice that was about to descend upon him is nothing compared to what I found about Bill Cosby. And it actually is, to defend him is difficult, because what he did was absolutely reprehensible. And that's why they got away with taking away his constitutional rights. But I'm going to tell you what they did and what rights they took away, because that behavior by the government could jail somebody who's completely innocent. Now, I do not believe he did anything criminal, but reprehensible, yes. But in any case, they can just make stuff up out of whole cloth if you don't get due process, if you don't get your rights. That's what the rights are for, to protect you against government. I want to wrap it up on the Kavanaugh hearing, though. I've got a call from Teresa. Hi, Teresa. You're on with Monica. Hi.
Hey, Monica. I came up with put my little noggin to work here, and I came up, I don't think Dr. Cook was actually assaulted. And there was
Dr.
three
Ford?
things. I don't think she was assaulted.
Why?
One, the first red flag was her profession when I found out what she did for a living.
Yeah.
Well, she has patience, too. I think she may have borrowed the circumstances that something may have happened to one of her patients or students.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you.
That's interesting.
Binkley, my producer here, he brought up some of the same points, including she is a psychologist. I noticed, I believe it was her thesis was about childhood psychology issues, but she had many, many, many papers, and in trying to figure out if any of those could contribute to her understanding of things like fear of flying or claustrophobia or assault. I mean, she's coming out with some serious psychological problems that have very specific diagnoses. And Binkley, you tried to find her academic history, and what'd you come up with?
I came up with nothing. She has she used to have 70 published papers, academic papers, and those can be revealing. And so I wanted to read through some of them, but they were removed from the internet. All of them. They're gone. They were linked on a mainstream site that was trying to bolster her credibility.
And her high school stuff was gone, too.
Yeah, and her high school yearbook was removed. The information about her online presence, was purged before or right at the time all this happened. So that doesn't mean that she is lying, but it does make you ask why. Why did that happen?
If you wanted to get an insight into what you're saying, Teresa, could be true or not, you can't, because they've taken it away. Plus, there was a letter.
Also, this would be one theory that would explain why she couldn't remember things.
Because she was just taking the story she heard and she didn't know the details.
Right.
But also, if you don't remember, then the people can fill in the blanks later and all that. But I'll tell you, for me, thank you so much for the call. For me, I just the precedent to go back to somebody's high school. I did not want to give her, whether she earned credence or not. I feel that it's profoundly inappropriate to do that, and I'll tell you why. Because I believe the next step, and I even on Fox Business News, I think I was listening to Neil Cavuto, he said, what are they going to do? Go back for future FBI background checks? Are they going to go back to high school from now on? Are they going to go back to middle school from now on? And yes, so there are two serious implications that I do not like about what's happening here, just about the time frame. One is the time frame issue is for people to think for themselves and understand concepts that are not just your mainstream pablum, the stuff they're getting from YouTube, the stuff they're getting from cable news, for them to think outside that box. They have to have the courage to be able to think for themselves, not be afraid of their own thoughts. And they are becoming afraid of their own thoughts. And this, because their thoughts become digitized like instantly. They have a thought and they immediately transmit it on their phones. And if that's a paper trail now, you have to actually caution your kids against that. And they think of the internet as a cognitive tool. You can't have them. I try to tell my kids it's not a forum for free speech. After my experience of getting banned from WordPress and so much important stuff lost, that I realize that it's not for that. We need to resuscitate more traditional forums for politics. But one thing that it's a lot of times the most significant outgrowth of a story like this is something that gets almost no press. I feel like the transgender bathroom issue and what she's talking about could be a stepping stone to people wanting cameras in bathrooms and bedrooms. And is not going to help women. I am not comfortable with that. But, it reminds me of one of those Black Mirror episodes.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah, where people had their phones were implanted into their own brains or their eyeglasses or whatever. And then if there was ever an issue like this, they would just replay what they saw so that every single thing you saw or heard was replayable, which we're like almost there now. People are doing it voluntarily. So thank you for that. And but I have to just touch on the Cosby stuff. I want to tell you what happened. Like, people don't even know the story here of what happened with Bill Cosby. This woman accused him of something in before 2005, and in 2005 the DA put out a press release that said, "We've come to an agreement. I will not prosecute, or the state will not prosecute Bill Cosby in this matter." And his intent was to encourage Bill Cosby to give a deposition in the civil matter so that this woman, who he felt there was not enough evidence for, he didn't believe her, but he said there wasn't enough evidence to bring the charges anyway. But civil cases have a lower standard of evidence. So she was going to sue him in civil court, and this guy basically released Cosby to be compelled to testify in civil court by assuring him that those words could not be used against him. So he got Cosby to give up his Fifth Amendment rights, and he put out a press release to that effect. Fast forward to now, and the judge overseeing Cosby's case, Stephen O'Neill, who had run against Castor, and Castor had delivered some dirty pool on this guy way back when. Cosby wanted this judge to recuse himself, but he would not. He did not respect Castor's agreement with Bill Cosby and allowed the prosecutor to bring parts of the deposition into the case. Jurors later said that those excerpts from the deposition is what got them to convict Cosby, but he did not let Cosby bring other parts or the entire deposition in. It's really egregious. I know, Binkley, you're like, what? Yes, it's all true. And this is why one of the many, many reasons it'll probably be overturned on appeal. So let me keep going through the amendments that are violated. That just brings me to the fact that, so the prosecutor wouldn't press charges in the beginning, and that's a Sixth Amendment issue where he had the right to a speedy trial and did not get one, and was assured that he would not ever be tried. So, and now he's on trial many years later. So his Sixth Amendment right was abridged. But so the prosecutor didn't bring charges. The first jury recently was hung and did not convict. This jury convicted on this deposition, which is probably overturnable along with many other factors in this case, means that Cosby will likely win on appeal. So what did the judge do? He would not let him have bail pending appeal. So now he's in jail, even though it's probably a fatally flawed conviction. So he's in jail right now, and that is both cruel because the judge knows all the flaws in the conviction, and it's unusual because this is an 80-year-old guy who no longer a blind 80-something-year-old who no longer poses the threat to society he's accused of posing. Furthermore, that deposition, he did not say that he sedated women to rape them. He said, I carried Quaaludes around because that's what the, quote, kids like to do. So I would lure them back with promises of Quaaludes, having repeat relationships with these people. He said, I didn't even take a drink. I would let them have a drink or have a Quaalude and seduce them. But that's what I did. And then that's so low. He didn't even have, disgusting, repulsive.
Yeah, I was under the impression, based on what I saw on the news until you told me about that. I didn't know anything about Quaaludes. I didn't know it was a desirable drug. I was under the impression it was something that he like slipped something in people's drinks and they had no idea, then they passed out. That's
no,
the perception
it wasn't
I got.
A roofie. It was something people desired. He used it as bait.
Yeah.
From what I could tell, but you can't. Maybe I could have found the real deposition. I looked. But then I found a lead just before the show started. I didn't get to see.
When you told me that, it changed my perspective on it.
Yeah, what he did was disgusting. It makes me want to throw up in my mouth. But it's not what they are saying. It's not what you think he did. And then I have a real smoking gun on why I think at the bottom of it all. So that's the Eighth Amendment, is that cruel and unusual punishment, which him being in jail right now, to me, is a violation of his Eighth Amendment. So we've got Fifth, Sixth, and Eighth. I think it's undeniable that he was denied those rights. But I have a smoking gun that it was all because of his political speech and that it's really a First Amendment issue. I'll give it to you after the break. 800 WSB Talk. You can tweet at me at Monica Perez Show.
Monica Perez.
I'm not interested in fantasies. I'm interested in reality.
On News 95.5 and AM 750 WSB.
Quick notes regarding elections and the upcoming election. Binkley and I will for sure be back at our regular time during the UGA bye week, October 20th, Saturday from 3 to 6. And I believe it's going to be everything you need to know about Stacey Abrams and the gubernatorial race. And there'll be plenty about Brian Kemp, too. I mean, you've just got to see the ugly truth, the naked truth. And in that vein, my favorite election integrity activist, Garland Favorito, whose Twitter handle is @VoterGA, and his website is voterga.org. A lot of his stuff is on Facebook. You can get to from that website. There's a Safe Voting System Commission meeting Friday, October 12th from 9 to 5 at the Secretary of State's Professional Licensing Boards Division. It's at 237 Coliseum Drive in Macon. And Voter GA is slotted to say their piece, I guess, at 1 p.m. So if you want to be involved in that, learn more about it, go to on Twitter @VoterGA or voterga.org and follow through to their Facebook page. I am going to take a quick call from Paul in Dunwoody. Hi, Paul. You are on with Monica. I can't get this to click, Rachel.
Hi, you there?
Yes.
I'm calling about the drug problems we're having. The press mentioned 30 doctors arrested or caught with overprescribing opiates in North Georgia. Well, there's also something called roof, and it's used to rape people.
Roofies?
Roof. It's called the roof drug. It hasn't been heard about lately, but it was heard about back in the 80s. But it's still around.
I think you're talking about roofies. Roofies.
Can you explain that?
Yes, I believe the roofie. That's the thing that muddies this Cosby case. Roofies, the date rape drug, is something that you slip in somebody's drink that makes them unconscious. And there was a woman unrelated to Cosby's conviction who claimed, although she had an ongoing relationship with him, that she drank coffee with him and then passed out. So that is what a roofie would do to you. The date rape drug, you go slip something in their drink, they come to your house and pass out, and then I guess you take advantage of their unconscious body. And they may or may not even remember it. And that's the thing that makes it dangerous. A couple of things make it dangerous. But what he was doing was different. The only thing that got him convicted was his own words and his own deposition. And it was that he deliberately carried around with him Quaaludes, which is not a knockout drug, and it's a getting high drug. It was very popular at the time, and that's even in the deposition. And I remember it as a little kid who was exposed to some countercultural elements and as the youngest of 9. But people would talk about it the way the next generation talked about ecstasy. And he used it as a lure, as a bait. And so he would tell them that he had them and they would want it. But, of course, it relaxed them and they were easy to take advantage of. And what's truly disgusting about what he did is that he himself was not taking them. He wasn't even drinking. He was just trying to take advantage of them, which it's just disgusting. It's disgusting. And we should talk about that because that is a reprehensible moral behavior. And we should think very ill of his character for doing that. Especially probably taking advantage of people who were starstruck, which actually also appears in the deposition. One of the girls said she was starstruck, and I can see that. Young people, I hate it. It's gross. However, he was not convicted for doing that. He was convicted for little excerpts of that deposition, which led the jury to believe that he was sedating women to have non-consensual sex with him.
That's what I thought, based on what I had known about it until you informed me of this.
Yeah, and so I encourage people to research this and look into it. I just rattled off some of the amendments that were violated. I'm going to hit the First Amendment at the bottom of the hour. There's a great article in the Atlanta Voice by a very courageous Stacey Brown. I'm going to refer to that after the break. And, sometimes it's the tough job to defend the rights of unsympathetic people. What my environmentalist teacher said, it's easy to defend charismatic megafauna. But this is not the case. So more to come. This is Monica Perez.
Monica Perez.
Have you ever questioned the nature of your reality?
On News 95.5 and AM 750, WSB.
I am your libertarian voice on WSB, usually Saturdays 3 to 6, but I'm on right now, Sunday 1 to 3, and you can go to our Twitter feeds, Binkley, my producer, and I, at Freedom Act Radio or at Monica Perez Show, to see how you can listen to our podcasts during this period of moving schedules. But don't forget, October 20th is the bye week. We will have our show on Saturday 3 to 6, and it's going to be the definitive Abrams show. So everything that you are not hearing about Stacey Abrams and some, it's like it's the classic lesser of two evils thing. Let's see what we can come up with for as a reference. Hey, if you don't know, you got to listen to this show. That's my goal for the October 20th show. But we were talking about Kavanaugh, but I also was talking a lot about Bill Cosby because people do not understand. I mean, 1 in 100 people probably know the truth of what Bill Cosby said he did, and how the conviction that put him in jail right now violated clearly 4 different rights in the Bill of Rights to protect you against government abuse. And he's a very unsympathetic character, and that is why it is not possible. That's why he doesn't get sympathy. But if all the coverage that was bestowed upon the Kavanaugh back and forth with his his accuser of a sexual attack in high school, I mean, two things I would have preferred 2 24/7 news coverage topics over the past week or two. So there's thousands of hours of cable news coverage on Kavanaugh v. Ford. And if we had used that time to do one of 2 things, explore Kavanaugh on the issues. Could he be truly fair and objective, especially in the light of how he treated a witness in the Vince Foster investigation, or in the way he treated recently the Fourth Amendment Guantanamo, stuff like that. Let's talk about those issues. But even better would have been if the Bill Cosby case had been completely vetted for its constitutional flaws. It would have brought awareness across the country to to how vulnerable we are to government overreach, and how the Bill of Rights is that thin line protecting us from that. And he was deprived of that. You had a great, Binkley, you had a great tweet that is a perfect lead-in for my smoking gun on the First Amendment issue underlying the Bill Cosby case. Let's hear it.
All right. Dean says that, yes, the government did him dirty, talking about Bill Cosby. They broke the law to get punishment for the sake of the movement, not to mention the bogus rationalization used to unseal the court documents for the AP.
Okay. So what Dean's talking about is the Associated Press, who knows who prompted them to reopen this case after so many years, wanted the deposition. So I said earlier that the prosecutor in 2005 put out a press release. We're sealing the records. We made an agreement with Bill Cosby that we would never prosecute this case. And either in that press release or just privately or whatever, it was known, Castor, the DA at the time, said, I am doing this so that this woman can get a deposition out of Bill Cosby in the civil case, and he can basically forfeit or waive his Fifth Amendment rights and not be not risk self-incrimination, because he will not be criminally prosecuted. So that deposition, he described what he did, which was disgusting. He offered women Quaaludes, which they took, and he did not, so that he could seduce them, which he did. But the deposition was later unsealed, and weirdly, in the jury trial against him, the entire deposition was not permitted as evidence, only the excerpts put forth by the prosecution. I mean, it's clearly a fatal flaw in this guy's conviction, which will likely be overturned. So the judge, probably knowing that, waived bail so that he had to go to jail pending appeal, which to me is an Eighth Amendment violation. It's cruel and unusual to put an 80-year-old blind guy in jail for something he's clearly not going to be able to do anymore.
And people in jail are probably going to have the same perception that doesn't understand, that is unaware of all the other things. So they're going to see him as even worse than he is.
Yeah, and he might be isolated, which is also before that reason. I know he's in a single cell. So, but here's the thing. How did that deposition get unsealed? It wasn't unsealed in that jury case. It was unsealed before, which is why the case was reopened, because the Associated Press got it unsealed. So a different judge, Eduardo Rebrano, made this crazy argument. This is the bottom line. There's a ruling, I think, in a case called Pansy, saying privacy. You have a right to privacy. The government can't put out court. You can protect court documents if they're really embarrassing. That you don't have to. You can testify openly in court even if something's embarrassing, because you will have a right of privacy. It's so that people will testify honestly, obviously. So, but there is several exceptions to that, or mitigants. Privacy, this is from Pansy, privacy can be curtailed if the party benefiting from the order of confidentiality is a public entity or official. Public entity or official. And by that they mean like an elected person. So this, Rebrano says, although the defendant is a public person, he does not surrender his privacy rights at the doorstep of the courthouse. Were this so, well-known non-governmental public figures visible in the public eye, but pursuing strictly private activities, would be subject to spurious litigation brought perchance to gain access to the intimate details of their personal lives. Under these circumstances, the potential for abuse is high. Yes, so the AP wanted salacious details of this guy's sex life for, no public purpose, or there were a lot of cases against Cosby at the time because this stuff was bubbling up, that this deposition could be used by those people if they were nefarious actors, as this judge suspects some might be, to make the thing sound legitimate because it will echo what his words are. It will highly prejudice any future proceedings. This is the lawyer in me coming out. Sorry if I...
Okay, reverse halo effect.
See, now that's
the
propaganda analyst in you. I don't understand that. Okay, but let me finish. All right. It says this case, however, is not about defendant's status as a public person by virtue of the exercise of his trade as a televised or comedic personality. Rather, defendant has donned the mantle of public moralist and mounted the proverbial electronic or print soapbox, which is what an elected official uses, to volunteer his views on, among other things, child rearing, family life, education, and crime. To the extent that defendant has freely entered the public square and thrust himself into the vortex of these public issues, he has voluntarily narrowed the zone of privacy that he is entitled to claim.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
So because you engage in discourse, you lose those rights you were talking about.
Right. So he's engaging in political speech. This guy says, very importantly, from a soapbox. But a soapbox is what an elected official or a candidate uses to get elected.
Yeah.
This guy was a citizen speaking out against some pervasive problems with society culture. He was exercising his First Amendment right strictly as a private citizen with access to public forums because of his position. But he was saying this stuff at an award ceremony. They actually refer to his pound cake speech, which was at an award ceremony for him. And then later it says, so there were a bunch of additional cases. People were making accusations against Bill Cosby, and he started speaking out and saying, I did not do any of that stuff. Forget about it. This judge goes on to say, by joining the debate about the merits of the allegations against him, he has further diminished his entitlement to a claim of privacy.
Wow.
So by defending himself in the court of public opinion where these people were making accusations, he has negated his right to keep that deposition sealed, which not only was embarrassing, but it was a violation of his Fifth Amendment right. He would never have made those statements.
Entrapment.
I think it is clear to say.
Entrapment, it sounds like.
Well, after the fact, but also what the judge said was that they failed to show that it would be embarrassing to him or cost him anything, which is crazy because he was on the verge of getting a new show. The proof is in the pudding that clearly it's highly detrimental to him. And because their case was like, it's clear that he would be embarrassed. And the guy's like, but you didn't articulate in what ways. You know, so you really should. One should read it. I printed it out.
That's crazy.
Many pages, but so it's crystal clear to me that, or I should say, that I just believe I presented evidence that it is his exercise of the First Amendment that led to his being denied Fifth, Sixth, and Eighth Amendment rights.
Yeah.
So. Is this the first time you've heard all this, Binkley?
That is the first time I've heard all that. And it's because he's such an unsympathetic character.
Oh, my goodness. Yes. All right, we're going to take a break. And then after the break, I'm not sure I can tolerate the sick clip that you want to
I was shocked when I saw what Bill Cosby retweeted in his own defense. Clearly displaying his lack of awareness.
Yes, he is a truly uncharismatic. All right, I'm going to give you a earmuffs warning. You got kids in the car, put your earmuffs on. So after the break, we're going to play this clip and wrap it up. Thanks, Binkley. This is Monica Perez.
Monica Perez.
Everything she said was true. She knew. And nobody believed her.
On News 95.5 and AM 750, WSB.
Next time we have a prize pack, we're going to have to see if people know what that clip was from. It's my favorite, as you can imagine. Yes, we are back. We're wrapping it up. Binkley, I'm a little nervous about what you're about to play. So, people, earmuff your children. It's not, I don't know. Ugh. What do you think, Binkley?
It's not vulgar in language. It's just what it's, right. I think it's important for this All
right, so introduce it, play it. I'm going to distance.
I went over to Bill Cosby's Twitter page recently, he's advertising his new comedy special, strangely.
Oh, my gosh.
And he had retweeted over the summer Farrakhan tweet.
So tell people who Louis Farrakhan is.
Yeah, we're going to play the clip right now of Louis.
Who is he?
Do what?
He's the leader of the Nation of Islam.
Leader of the Nation of Islam, and ironically, the kind of hero of many of the Women's March organizers, the main founders of it.
Which really drives me crazy because, if I'm not mistaken, if memory serves, the 2 convicted killers of Malcolm X were members of the Nation of Islam. Yes. And I have a lot of respect for Malcolm X, and I think that was a world-altering tragedy, kind of unprecedented.
Yeah, so this is Louis Farrakhan, friend of Women's March leaders, and retweeted by Bill Cosby recently. We can play that clip.
Bill Cosby. Sisters. Do you know how easy it is for men in power to have sex with you? Some of you will resist, but most women who want to move up in the world, Bill Cosby don't have to offer you no quaalude.
That was awful.
I have to say,
I should have listened to it again.
I have to say that the best defense to a sexual assault accusation in the middle of the hashtag #MeToo movement is not women are easy. See, Louis Farrakhan said so.
That is from Bill Cosby's verified
Bill
Twitter?
Cosby retweeted that in his own defense and said thank you to him.
So, look, it's hard to defend this guy.
Such an unsympathetic character.
I have a daughter. I was a young woman. I was harassed in the extreme many times. Men are sharks. They're animals. And this guy was one of those people.
And this is the guy who the women who are behind these Kavanaugh protests, they idolize this guy.
I just don't get that.
The irony.
I don't know. It's all that means justify the ends thing. I mean, you can't. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing with Kavanaugh. Like, I want to look at the issues. You've got to actually look at what this person's character and principles. Like, first you have to see what they say their principles are. Then you have to see if they adhere to those principles. This guy is clearly stating principles that are offensive. And so yes, I would say Bill Cosby was ill-advised to tweet that. But he's sitting in jail, I would say completely unjustifiably right now. And that's a tragedy. And of course, the reality is that it's the unsympathetic character who paves the way for an end to rights. And what happens? They do things like Matt Lauer or whatever. Like they'll take somebody, they'll deprive them of their rights, or they'll make a summary judgment, rush to judgment, and then that rush to judgment will be proven correct. Bill Cosby's obviously contributing to this, and that just validates the necessity of having, is what Kavanaugh said in the metadata thing. Even if it were a violation of the search, we have this necessity where we don't have time for rights right now. That should have been the issue. We'll be back October 20th, and in the meanwhile, you can check out our podcasts on just go to at Freedom Acts Radio. This is Monica Perez with Brad Binkley. Thanks, guys. Bye.